Good morning. Welcome to Hispanic Federation's Encuentro Nacional press conference. I'm now pleased to introduce you to President and CEO of Hispanic Federation, Frankie Miranda.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to our partners and members of Congress who are joining us today. Thank you as well to the Congressional Hispanic Caucus for hosting us. I am Frankie Miranda, President and CEO of Hispanic Federation, a network of more than 850 partner organizations in 43 states and territories. This week, we have gathered members of our network in our nation's capital, bringing together more than 150 partners from Latino serving organizations across the country. By the end of today, we will have visited over 100 congressional offices to send a unified message. Vote no on this reconciliation package. The previous reconciliation package gave us H.R. 1, legislation that has resulted in 4.1 million Latinos losing their health care, tens of billions of dollars being stripped from education programs, and safety net programs being gutted, leaving our children hungry and families without the most pressing issues they face every day. No solutions for these families. And yet, the American people have not felt the full effect of H.R. 1, which were intentionally written to take place after these midterm elections. Through reconciliation, H.R. 1 allocated $170 billion to build the aggressive federal immigration crackdown we see today. It took roughly 3 months after the funding allocation was made for federal agents to be deployed into our communities, killing U.S. citizens, terrorizing families, and creating a climate of fear in our neighborhoods. Rather than enacting the protections that the American public is demanding, this fast-track reconciliation deal is attempting to allocate an additional $70 billion to continue horrendous detention conditions, separating children from their parents, and countless other atrocities. The public has been adamant that we want accountability and oversight, but if this reconciliation package passes, it will slam the door on the public's demands. A little over a month ago, Congress ended a 76-day government shutdown, one of the longest in history, after refusing to fund the Department of Homeland Security without oversight or accountability in how these federal funds are used. Now, certain members of Congress and this federal administration are attempting to provide unfettered funding to DHS without any guardrails, subverting both the public and congressional efforts to implement accountability measures. We have seen how these dollars are used when dispersed without oversight. Unrestrained federal agents are deployed into communities, threatening public safety, violating constitutional protections, and diverting resources away from programs that uplift our communities. Even now, school desks sit empty, businesses are closed, and families are torn apart, and lives are lost because of unchecked federal action. The trauma and fear caused by unrestrained federal enforcement is real. The speakers here and on the Hill will share stories directly about the communities that continue to be targeted and will share how their neighborhoods and their families have been impacted by unrestrained ICE operations. We urge Congress to reject this reconciliation legislation and return to bipartisan negotiations to incorporate oversight, accountability of the actions of federal agents. Thank you.
Thank you, Frankie. Now we are joined by Congressman Jesus Chuy Garcia, representing the 4th District of Illinois.
Thank you and good morning y muy buenos días a todas las organizaciones que están aquí de a través de todo el país. Gracias por madrugar para estar aquí esta mañana y gracias Frankie por tu presencia también. I'm Congressman Chuy Garcia and of course I represent the 4th District in Illinois and I'm honored to join the Hispanic Federation and leaders from across the country. We are here because we've seen first responders and witnesses to the brutal and lawless crackdown on our communities in the name of law enforcement. The Chicago region and my district in particular have been one of the epicenters of this administration's mass deportation agenda. They murdered Silverio Villegas Gonzalez with no accountability. They almost murdered Marimar Martinez and tear-gassed children and dumped people into appalling conditions at detention centers like the Broadview Center. Kristi Noem is gone. Gregory Bobino is gone. But it doesn't matter who leads DHS. The violence and the inhumane treatment continue, as we've seen last few days in New Jersey at Delaney Hall. What's worse is that it's being paid by our tax dollars. The American people want lower prices and health care that they can afford. Not a tax against working people, not inhumane detention centers, not endless wars or scams that line the pockets of Trump and his friends. Instead of doing anything to rein in the violent ICE practices or help Americans survive in Trump's economy, Republicans are using their budget to hand ICE and Border Patrol another $70 billion, a blank check to fund more cruelty and brutality in American communities. This toxic and reckless budget does nothing to lower costs, nothing to rein in ICE, nothing to end Trump's war in Iran, and nothing to stop Trump from using our tax dollars as his own personal checkbook. So that's why we're standing here today, because the first thing in the morning is to say no more money for ICE or CBP. We will not use taxpayer dollars to terrorize our communities. We will keep fighting to make our communities' lives safer, healthier, and more affordable. And we will keep fighting to hold this out of control administration accountable. Muchas gracias. Estamos aquí porque hemos sido los primeros en responder y hemos sido testigos de la brutal y arbitraria represión contra nuestras comunidades, perpetrada en nombre de la aplicación de leyes migratorias. La región de Chicago y mi distrito en particular ha sido uno de los epicentros de la agenda de deportaciones masivas de esta administración. Asesinaron a Silverio Villegas González cuando él dejó a sus niños en la escuela. Casi asesinaron a Marimar Martínez y lanzaron gases lacrimógenos contra niños y abandonaron a personas en condiciones deplorables en centros de detención. No importa quién dirija a DHS, la violencia y el trato inhumano continúan, tal como hemos visto en los últimos días en Nueva Jersey, en Delaney Hall. Lo peor de todo es que esto se está financiando con el dinero de nuestros impuestos. El pueblo quiere precios bajos y atención médica a su alcance. No queremos ataques contra la clase trabajadora, ni centros de detención inhumanos, ni guerras interminables, ni estafas que sirvan para llenar los bolsillos de Trump y sus amigos. Este presupuesto tóxico es irresponsable, no hace nada para reducir el costo de la vida vida, nada para poner freno a ICE, nada para poner fin a la guerra de Trump en Irán y nada para impedir que Trump utilice el dinero de nuestros impuestos como si fuera su chequera personal. Por eso estamos aquí, a primera hora de la mañana, para decir ni un dólar más para ICE y Trump y CBP. Seguiremos luchando para hacer que la vida en nuestras comunidades sea más segura, más saludable y más asequible, y seguiremos luchando para exigir rendición de cuentas en esta administración que se ha salido de control. Ni un dólar más para este proyecto de reconciliación. Muchas gracias.
Gracias, Congressman Garcia. Now we are joined by Puerto Rico Resident Commissioner Pablo Jose Hernandez.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here with Hispanic Federation today, urging all my colleagues to vote no on this reconciliation bill. This bill does nothing to help our communities. In fact, it does a lot to destroy our communities. As Puerto Rico's representative in Congress, I've seen firsthand how immigration enforcement and overreach has hurt our immigrant communities on the island. Barrio Obrero, where most immigrants, mostly Dominicans, live, became a ghost town after raids began early last year. Businesses were shut down, kids were too afraid to go to school, the elderly were too concerned to go to health centers. We saw that firsthand when we visited a health center with Leader Hakeem Jeffries last week. I urge all my colleagues to vote no on this bill. To vote no on this bill because it destroys our communities, because it hurts our communities, because it goes against the values that this country is supposed to defend and stand up for on the 250th anniversary of its founding. Now I'll repeat my statement in Spanish because Chuy said an important precedent. Me honra estar aquí con Hispanic Federation defendiendo las causas de nuestros inmigrantes y de nuestras comunidades latinas en los Estados Unidos. Exhorto a todos mis colegas a votar no en este proyecto que le asigna sobre 72 billones de dólares a el enforcement de inmigración, que tanto daño, que tanta tristeza, que tanta agonía, que tanta destrucción ha causado en nuestras comunidades latinas en los Estados Unidos. Y como puertorriqueño en particular he visto como la aplicación violenta de estas leyes y medidas de inmigración ha destruido nuestra comunidad inmigrante. He visto cómo negocios en Barrio Obrero, donde residen la mayoría de nuestros inmigrantes, han cerrado. He oído historias de niños que dejan de ir a la escuela por temor. He conocido personas que dejan de asistir a los centros de salud por miedo a que los detengan. Esos no son los valores de los Estados Unidos. Y tenemos que darnos a respetar, tenemos que dar a respetar nuestra comunidad inmigrante y tenemos que exhortar que se vote en contra de este proyecto para que no le den un centavo más a la aplicación indiscriminada, violenta e injusta de las leyes migratorias. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. We are now joined by one of our partners, Juliana Lozano, founder and executive director of Despierta North Carolina.
My name is Juliana Lozano, and I'm the founder and executive director of Despierta, a nonprofit in Charlotte which provides mental health and wellness programs for youth and families. But today I'm not just speaking as a community leader, but as a mother. Last November, our community experienced intense immigration enforcement activity that created fear far beyond those directly targeted. And I found myself having to explain to my 7-year-old daughter why masked, armed men were surrounding her school and our neighborhood. She was scared. Many children were. Through our work, we heard from families who were afraid to take their children to school, walk them to the bus stop, attend medical appointments, and even leave their home for basic needs. One story that deeply impacted our community was a father who was detained near one of the schools we serve while dropping off his child. No child should have to witness their parent being taken away. No classroom should have to carry this trauma of that moment. The impact extended into our schools. Students were carrying fear, anxiety, and uncertainty. Some were bullied and told that they do not belong here. For some young people, that isolation and fear was too much to carry, and across communities, we saw how this kind of pain contributed to heartbreaking tragedies. As a social worker, I can tell you that fear does not end when enforcement operations are over. Children and families carry that stress long after. We see it in heightened anxiety, in painful uncertainty, trying to return to normal when your sense of safety has been taken away. I grew up in a small town in North Carolina. The community where people who looked like me was not always represented. Many of us spent our lives trying to prove that we belong. But we do belong here. Aquí estamos. Our children belong in classrooms. Our families belong in their neighborhoods. And every person deserves dignity, safety, and humanity. Thank you.
And next we will hear from our partner from Illinois, Linda Tortolero, President and CEO of Latino Policy Forum.
Buenos dias.
Buenos días.
Budgets show us what matters to those in power and what and who they are willing to abandon and ignore. Last year, H.R. 1 made deep cuts to critical social safety programs that some of the most vulnerable among us rely on for food, health care, and education for our children. H.R. 1 also allocated $150 billion of taxpayer dollars for enhanced immigration enforcement, roughly what the U.S. government spent on immigration enforcement across 26 years. In Illinois, the impacts of last year's federal budget have been most painful for working families, immigrants, those living with disabilities, survivors of trafficking and domestic violence, and so many others. 10,000 lawfully present immigrants in Illinois, including refugees, asylees, survivors of trafficking and domestic violence, will lose access to Medicaid starting October 1st. On April 1st, these same immigrants lost SNAP food assistance. Even before the full effects of these cuts through H.R. 1 come into effect, Illinois has already faced some of the worst attacks to the dignity of our families and safety and well-being of our communities. I am grateful to Representative Garcia for highlighting those incidents of racial profiling, targeted harassment, violence, unlawful detention and kidnapping, and violations of the constitutionally protected free speech. Fast forward, in February 2026, reports indicate that over 68,000 people were held in detention in the United States, a 75% increase from the start of last year, and 38 people have died in ICE custody. Many members of Congress want to use reconciliation and hand this administration $72 billion more of our taxpayer dollars for ICE, Border Patrol, and the White House ballroom. The families we serve know their priorities: groceries, rent, a doctor's visit, safety at school, and equal access to education. They ask, why does this budget find room for enforcement, but never for the programs that keep families afloat? Families want government to step back from enforcement operations sweeping our neighborhoods that separate families and scare parents away from sending their kids to school or going to work, and that threatens businesses and disrupts everyday life. Fear does not make communities safer or more prosperous. Fund what families need to be safe and to thrive, and serve the people who represent you, not only those who elect you. Thank you.
And now we are joined by Congresswoman Delia Ramirez, representing the 3rd District in Illinois.
Buenos dias. Good morning, everyone. Buenos dias. Ah, that's better. That's better. We're going to need that energy, y'all. So, si hace un poquito de cafecito, un tecito, it's going to be a long day here fighting for the justice that our communities deserve. As you just heard, I'm Congresista Adelia Catalina Ramirez. orgullosamente hija de padres guatemaltecos, ciudadana de nacimiento por derecho y la representante del Distrito 3, una comunidad que está en la calle luchando todos los días por nuestra comunidad. And yes, I said it in Spanish, because as fascists seek to diminish, to divide, and to dehumanize us, I want to remind us to remain proud, to remain powerful and defiant to the injustices and the fascism that we are seeing. You see, since my time as the executive director of a nonprofit in Chicago, I've seen the essential work that community organizations are doing to nurture and sustain a healthy democracy. And today, we get to stand here strong with a coalition of organizations that are holding those in power accountable and fighting for our communities, for our children, and for our families. That is one of my colleagues, as a matter of fact. Someone who we need to talk to about justice. So I want to be very blunt with you. DHS remains the biggest threat to our collective safety, and funding it only fuels our own destruction and our human suffering. You see, for over a year, our communities have witnessed abductions, kidnappings, the unlawful detention of children, the militarization of our cities, the murder of our neighbors, the persecution of dissent, and the rise of fascism in our nation, all brought to us by Trump and DHS. And my colleagues in the Senate, Republicans are trying to give them more money instead of actual policy reforms and guards. They want to give them more money so that they can continue to fund billions of dollars, more money, to be infused into ICE and CBP. And we've seen what DHS can do with unlimited resources and unchecked power. We've seen it around the country. It's why we're here. Yes. From Chicago to California to New York to every single corner of this country. From courtrooms in Chicago to Delaney Hall, New Jersey, to Dilley Center in Texas, our communities are being threatened by paramilitary terror force. And so what does that mean for us? Hispanic Federation, what does that mean for us? This moment requires us to move beyond statements and to demonstrate our commitment to real accountability. It is why I introduced the Melt ICE Act, a bill that has been officially endorsed by the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. It ends immigration detention and monitoring. It disrupts DHS's immigration enforcement. And while Republicans try to cut funding for our communities, the Melt ICE Act returns taxpayer dollars, your money, back to the communities that have been impacted by the terror that ICE has unfolded in our communities for things like, I don't know, healthcare, housing, community safety, and other critical services. Look, I am clear that the Melt ICE Act is just the first step, the line on the sand. But we also know that this agency was established to violate our rights under the pretense of ensuring our security, and that cannot be reformed. In just a few minutes, I will be heading to the Department of Homeland Security's committee, where we're going to see and confront the new secretary of DHS. And let me be clear with you. He may not be in all the ads, he might not be wearing the costumes and on top of the horses, but he is just like the former secretary, who I won't even say her name because it's not worthy. He is doing the very same thing because this agency was designed to use the premise of protecting us from domestic terrorism to then be able to violate our constitutional rights. And it's why I'm going to tell him to his face that DHS must be dismantled piece by piece, and something new must be formed. A system that honors our rights, our dignity, and our humanity. That is what we have to be building. Because the truth is that a couple years ago, 2 decades ago, we brought ICE and DHS into this world. It has not been here since the founding of our nation. Yes. And so that means that we can build a world without it too. So today is an invitation on this gorgeous day for every single member of Congress to actually go beyond the hashtag, to melt ICE with me, because we have a bill to make it happen, and to begin dismantling Department of Homeland Security. And together, organizing together, we will get it done. Because I believe in que sí se puede, because I have seen que sí se ha podido. Gracias. Thank you.
And now I'd like to introduce Maruchi Guzman, Executive Director of Latino Leadership in Florida.
Good morning.
Good morning.
In Central Florida, like other communities, we're seeing firsthand the human impact of increasingly aggressive and unrestrained federal immigration enforcement in our communities. While every nation has the right to secure its borders and enforce its laws, enforcement without accountability creates fear that extends far beyond undocumented individuals and affects entire communities. Some of the families we serve through our nonprofit are mixed status families. The same stories can be repeated across different communities. When enforcement actions increase without clear guardrails or due process, children go to school afraid they may come home to no parents. In Orange County alone, 7 schools have closed due to low enrollment. Our families have become reluctant to seek health care, report crimes, attend church, or participate in community programs because they feel that drawing attention to themselves is putting them in danger. In Central Florida, these fears ripple through our schools, our businesses, and our nonprofit organizations. Workers stay home, parents cancel appointments, families avoid receiving services they desperately need. The result is greater isolation, poorer health outcomes, and increased stress on children who are already navigating difficult lives. Congress is currently considering a reconciliation package that would provide approximately $7 billion in additional funding for ICE, without accompanying oversight or accountability measures. We continue to raise the concerns about the lack of safeguards and transparency and negative effects in our communities. As leaders, we should be asking whether public policy strengthens families or weakens them. We can support public safety and orderly immigration processes while also protecting civil rights, due process, and the dignity of our neighbors. Central Florida's strength comes from its diversity and policies that create widespread fear, ultimately make communities less healthy, less connected, and less prosperous. We fund what we value. Let's value our communities. Thank you.
And now from Pennsylvania, we are joined by President and CEO of Aspira National, Carlos Valentin Jr.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My name is Carlos Valentin Jr., and I'm the President and CEO of the Aspira National Association. I'm proud to be a Pennsylvanian who has spent nearly 2 decades working alongside Hispanic students, families, and communities through Aspira. Today, Congress is considering roughly $70 billion in additional funding for immigration enforcement. For many people, that may sound like a budget debate. For the families I serve, it's much more personal. Over the years, I've met students who've carried burdens that no child should have to carry. I remember talking with a young person who told me that every day when they came home from school, they worried whether a parent would still be there. Think about that for a second. While other students were thinking about homework, sports, or college applications, this student was wondering whether their family was still going to be together. That is the human impact that often gets lost in these policy debates. The effects of aggressive immigration enforcement are felt long before any enforcement action occurs. Fear and uncertainty affect classrooms, workplaces, neighborhoods, and entire communities. Parents become afraid to engage with schools. Students struggle to focus on learning. Families withdraw from community life. The result is less stability, less trust, and fewer opportunities for young people to succeed. Pennsylvania is home to more than 1 million Hispanic residents who help drive our Commonwealth forward every day. We are workers, entrepreneurs, educators, healthcare professionals, taxpayers, and future leaders. The success of Pennsylvania and the success of the Hispanic community are increasingly connected. As Congress considers this historic investment in immigration enforcement, I urge our elected officials to remember that behind every policy discussion are real children, real families, and real dreams. We should be investing in education, workforce development, and opportunity so that every young person has the chance to learn, contribute, and succeed. The future of Pennsylvania depends on the strength of all of its communities. Let us build that future through hope, opportunity, and investment in people, not through fear and uncertainty. Thank you.
And now for our final speaker, we are joined by Jose Rodriguez, President and CEO of El Concilio in California.
Good morning, buenos dias. My name is Jose Rodriguez, and I am proud to stand with you on behalf of El Concilio, California. For decades, El Concilio has worked alongside immigrant families, farm workers, children, and seniors, and working people in the Central Valley of California. Communities that do not ask for special treatment. They ask for fairness, dignity, and the right to live, work, worship, study, and raise their children without fear. And today, we must speak plainly. Our communities are under attack. Unrestrained federal immigration crackdown are not abstract policies, discussions in Washington, D.C. They are realities in our neighborhoods. There are children sitting in classrooms terrified that their parents may not come home from work. There are workers staying silent about abuse because they fear retaliation. There are families skipping medical care, avoiding public programs, and living with fear. This is not public safety. This is state-sponsored fear. And now Congress is considering a reconciliation bill that would put roughly $70 billion into ICE and CBP without accountability. Let us be clear. A blank check for enforcement without accountability is a direct threat to immigrant families, civil rights, due process, and the dignity and morality of this nation. We cannot fund fear without communities, we cannot fund fear while our communities need housing. We cannot fund intimidation while our families need health care. We cannot fund raids while children need schools, protection, and safety. So today we call on Congress to reject enforcement without limits, reject cruelty disguised as security, and invest in communities, not crackdowns. Our families are not political pawns, bargaining chips. Our children are not collateral damage. Our communities are the backbone of this country. And we will not be silent while they are traumatized, dehumanized, and erased. Thank you.
Thank you. And now at this time, we'll open up to any potential questions from press. If none, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you.